Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adcast, a podcast for the study of modern visual culture. I'm your burnt-out, runaway, aimless overachiever, Soup.
And I'm your father, Renu.
This episode AT stands for Arakawa 2, because we'll be talking about Silver Spoon. But before we get into that, what have we been up to? My god, when was the last time we even recorded an episode? Jesus Christ, I don't remember either.
Let's see. I'll just talk about what I've been up to recently. And
Sure.
I went to Kauai-Con, which is in Honolulu, Hawaii.
I think you were gearing up to go to that when we recorded the last episode.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe. It's my second time going there. And this time it was a solo trip. But it was a lot of fun. A lot of really cool people at the convention. And I also took like a couple of extra days after the convention to just like vacation and relax and enjoy Hawaii. So it was a lot of fun. I went to the place where they filmed like Jurassic Park and stuff like that, and I also went snorkeling with the sea turtles. That was cool too.
Sea turtle.
Yeah, it was really cool. And the food, of course, was amazing there. Oh my gosh.
I bet.
Yeah.
Garlic shrimp.
Garlic shrimp.
That's what I think of whenever I think of Hawaii. The garlic shrimp. It's just garlic and shrimp and I got like butter, but man, is it good.
Yeah, their shrimp trucks are apparently really famous.
Yeah, it's all about that garlic shrimp.
Garlic shrimp. Yeah, no, it goes, the stuff there, like I didn't have a single bad meal. All the stuff was good. Even like the stuff in like convenience stores or whatever, like, because they have like either a 7-Eleven or an ABC store in every corner, and I mean, in mainland, ABC store is just for liquor, but over there, it's as a convenience store, right? So you can get liquor or everything else that you would get. So yeah, it was really good. And now I'm actually gearing up for a trip this week. I'll be going out to your corner of the land. Yeah, I'll be going to well, kind of nearish. It was same state, not
kind
really
of
near.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be going to Yosemite, like the national parks up there. So
nice. Wasn't Yosemite where you caught COVID last time?
Was it?
I don't remember.
I haven't been before. Oh no, Yellowstone.
No. Was that Yellowstone? Okay,
yes.
all right. Yeah,
yes.
I never remember because they're both.
They start with a L.
They
Y.
both start with the Y.
Start with a Y.
They're both like
I say L.
nature places.
Yes, and they're both national parks. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I've been to Yosemite, but I've never been to Yellowstone.
Oh, okay. Yellowstone's fun too if you want to see like the springs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. What have you been up to?
Oh boy, what haven't I been up to? Yeah, it was like easy and chill beginning of the year, and then all of a sudden I have like a billion things to do. Yeah. Well, I mean, a bunch of stuff has happened. There's a bunch of stuff going on in my life. The thing that's occupying a lot of my time and energy is like gearing up for a wedding. Gotta get all those plans down. Gotta make sure everything's in place. Yeah.
I'm so excited. Yes.
So yeah, I've been doing that, and that's been taking up a lot of time. And I went on a little weekend trip this weekend. We drove down to LA, and then we drove back up the next day. And now I'm here. I'm still like kind of sleeping off that trip there. But yeah, it was nice. It was fun. It was just like a little weekend trip to see a friend, and for Gwen to get a little color test so that they know what kind of cool tattoos that they can get.
Okay.
Just to make sure that it's just to make sure that none of the ink like reacts badly. So they do like a little thing on you, and then you see if any of it like doesn't heal or whatever. Just so you know.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we went down there for that. And we had some really good food. We had some really good hot chicken, hot Nashville style chicken.
Hot chicken.
Hot chicken. Very spicy, but very tasty. We went to a Sichuan restaurant with really good mapo tofu. Oh, it was so good.
Mapo
Oh,
tofu.
so good. I ate so much food. Oh, yeah. That was nice. You know, a little weekend trip. I got some recharge time in during the trip. Because we stopped at like this little tea room that was nice. It's like
Okay.
it's like a little place where you go and you just like drink tea and you like get some work done or whatever. And it's nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's nice. That's soothing.
Mm-hmm. Like it's like a hippie version of like a WeWork.
Okay.
So that was fun, and yeah, we went to this place that served like a traditional Japanese breakfast.
Ooh.
Yeah. We waited for a little bit, but it was it was cold and rainy. That was like the weirdest thing, which is that like the couple of days, like the week before, right? So like last week was really warm,
Mm-hmm.
like abnormally warm for this time of the year, right? Like all of a sudden it was warm, right? Because it's been kind of rainy lately, and then we drive down to LA on the day that it like starts raining, and then we're in LA for like the 2 days that it's like raining a lot, and then we're back up here now, and the rain has stopped. It's nice again.
It only rained specifically while you were down there.
Like, yeah, I feel like this happened like I think the last time we went too,
Mm-hmm.
where like it was just suddenly like really rainy, and it was just like there were storms everywhere. It was
Mm-hmm.
wild. Also, like it was like really cold, like weirdly cold there.
Just a great time to go.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just a very confusing time to be there, really, weather-wise. Um, let's see. Other than that, oh boy. I don't know. There's probably some other stuff that I've been up to. God, if I remember any of it. I mean, I remember that there's Elden Ring DLC coming out, so I have to go finish Elden Ring because I never actually finished it when it came out. I played like like 30 hours or whatever, and then I got distracted doing other stuff. So I'm trying to go back and finish that.
Okay.
We're very rapidly approaching the Final Fantasy 14 next expansion, Dawn Trail. So normally I feel like okay, I'm just gonna say this, which is that normally the podcast takes an unexpected break in the summertime, just because like we can't get the schedules to line up, like because Renu's just going to cons, and like usually I'm going on some trips as well. This time I'm like guaranteeing that there's at least going to be a little bit of schedule disruption because my wedding is taking place in the summertime, and I got some other stuff going on in the summertime, and also the Final Fantasy 14 expansion is going on in the summertime. So I'm basically just like from the months of like June to like August, I'm just gonna promise like nothing. I promise nothing for the podcast. Like I'm preempting it this time because I can see it coming ahead of time. I'm just gonna go ahead and say if nothing happens at that time, I'm not dead. I mean, I am, but like we'll be back. I promise. We'll be back.
We will return.
We will return in the fall as we usually do. I don't know. Summer's just like summer's a weird time. It's just like, despite the fact that neither of us are in school anymore, it still feels like we like cram stuff into the summertime because it's like when people do things.
Yes, it's just when all of the things happen.
Yeah. So you can capitalize on summer break. But like, what does summer break mean if you don't have school? Like,
it's not really a break. It's just when you're
summer.
doing everything. When you're traveling.
It's just summer. You're suddenly is when you're busy.
It's when you're busy.
So anyway, yeah, I'll be very busy in the summertime, and if no episodes go up in that period, that is why. Also, like, there's like people coming and like staying in our house for near our wedding time. You know, friends from farther away.
Yeah.
So you know, probably I should hang out with the people that came to see me, right?
I would imagine.
But yeah, so I was gonna say look forward to it. That's a weird thing to say for a break. That's like the opposite of what it is. I don't know.
I mean, we can come back with stories.
Yeah, I'm sure I will have many story.
Yeah.
I'm sure I will have many story.
Yeah, Soupy and I will be meeting up at the wedding again, which we haven't seen each other in like years in person.
I was gonna say, I think right now it must have been how old? Like 8 years, I think, since we last saw, which is kind of crazy to think about.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's like wild. But I think it has legitimately been that long, because I think the last time I was 19.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Whoa,
oh, man.
That's fucked up.
And now you're getting married.
Now I'm getting married. Yeah. Speaking of growing up, coming of age, you want to talk about Silver Spoon?
Yes, let's go.
Okay. I'm gonna preface this with it has been a couple of months since I actually finished reading this. We were planning on doing this, I think, for like January's episode or something, and then like, man, I don't know what happened. Stuff just did not line up.
We're here now.
And then we had to do the seasonal episodes, and then like today we were gonna record or I was intending on recording a seasonal episode, and then I realized, oh wait, we haven't actually like finished some of the stuff that we need to us.
It's okay. We've been needing to record this one.
So yeah, this is a little impromptu.
Our long overdue
episode about Hiromu Arakawa's Silver Spoon. Yeah. So I remember when this started getting serialized. Back in 2011. Well, because like, you know, 2011 was like prime sort of if you were an anime like weirdo, it's like 2011 was like the year for you, you know? Because like right, like we hadn't quite broken out into the sort of like mainstream, right? Like there were obviously like a lot of people watching anime at the time, but like we're talking about people that were like watching like 3-part anime on YouTube, right?
Yes.
So like yeah, like a part 1, part 2, part 3, each divided into like 10-minute segments for your viewing pleasure. Definitely, absolutely not with the express permission of any of the studios.
And, but yeah, I mean, it's just weird to think about. Like now, everything is like licensed, and we have to.
Yeah. It is a really kind of odd thing to think about how far anime has come and how far it has like penetrated into the mainstream to the point where like a lot of the like forms that it takes and a lot of the ways that it presents are just kind of like foreign to us as like, I don't know, like anime boomers.
It's like we used to struggle for things to watch, and now there's like too many things to watch.
There's way too much to watch. You know, it used to be hard to find things to watch because like a lot of stuff, you know, most stuff was not officially licensed, and you had to have people like basically scrape the episode and then like fan sub it so that you could understand it.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. And like, back in the day, back in the olden times, back in my day, it used to be that you would even sometimes get anime that still had the like commercials from like the broadcasting still included. So you were just like, I guess I'm just watching Japanese commercials now.
That was always kind of fun, though.
It was not a particularly unusual thing to happen. But now we got like all these anime streaming services, for better and for worse.
Yes. We also have higher quality dubs now too.
Oh, we do have higher quality dubs. Yeah. I watched a lot of the Freerin dub, and it's really good.
Nice.
It is like definitely one of the best dubs of an anime that I've ever seen. Like they really nailed the casting and the directing for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think we're solidly in the era of good English dubs, which is great.
I think that the darker times of anime dubs have passed.
They were campier times.
They were campier times. It was just like a period when, people were just really uncertain about which direction to take things in, because like you have voice acting for like video games as like a thing that's also kind of like risen up along with, anime dubbing, and it like the scene obviously used to just be much smaller. There were like 3 voice actors. And one of them was unfortunately Vic.
Yes.
But we don't live in that dark time anymore. Now we actually have like voice actors, which is good. Now, obviously, the working conditions for voice actors has not gotten terribly much better, unfortunately. But man, if that just doesn't exemplify anime as an industry, huh?
Yay!
But yeah, I mean, I remember when this started getting serialized, because obviously by then I had finished Fullmetal Alchemist. I had, I think I'd read through it, maybe, or maybe not. I don't remember what I talked about in the Fullmetal Alchemist episode. I might have read some of the manga for that, but I don't remember because it's been like a couple years since we recorded that one. But yeah, I remember I was really excited for a new Arakawa serialization, and it was interesting. I don't know what I was expecting. I don't know what anybody was expecting, really. But we got Silver Spoon, which is about a boy going to agricultural high school, which is like the most like mundane thing you can imagine.
Yeah, like after the follow up to this like huge hitting shonen hit about alchemy and I don't know, the entire world possibly ending. I don't know. We get a not a follow up, but like another series from the same author, and it's about agricultural life. But I thought it was interesting. I think it's really cool that she decided to, challenge herself and write something completely different.
Yeah, I agree. I always think it's really cool when creators decide to branch out from what they are known for and try something else. It was really cool to see something that was obviously drawn from her own experiences as sort of growing up in this agricultural sector. And man, it is, I feel like it's so rare for a manga that is being serialized to like stick an ending, basically. And in comparison to the Fullmetal Alchemist ending, I think it is a little bit faster. It feels a little bit more rushed, but it still feels satisfying enough to me that I'm willing to say that Silver Spoon had a good ending,
Mm-hmm.
which is really impressive because it's hard to stick the landing on one ending, and it's really hard to do it on two, right?
Yeah, of course.
Um, I was very happy with how Silver Spoon progressed and how it ended, and there is a certain kind of connection that I have to it as somebody who was like basically Hachiken's age, like when I started reading it, and then when I finished it, which was this year, 2024, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what, 27 now? So,
Mm-hmm.
like, it was just a very, like, it was a very, like, you know, a very meaningful experience to sort of read the story of, like, a sort of burnt out, aimless high school kid sort of finding out what he cares about and what he wants to do with his life. And
Mm-hmm.
it was very inspiring. I really liked a lot of things about Silver Spoon. Uh, some of the things are things that Arakawa is obviously really strong with, which is like having more of an ensemble cast
Yes.
and making sure that there is enough focus put on the other characters such that they don't feel unnecessary, but also not putting so much focus on them as to make the main characters feel like secondary characters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those
Mm-hmm.
things where you can tell that Arakawa is very good at moving the focus when it needs to be moved, and also very good at telling these kinds of stories in a way that does not feel juvenile, even if the content matter is a little bit more juvenile, especially with Full Metal Alchemist, where despite being a shonen action manga, it still feels like it has this really mature way of approaching its subject matter. And Silver Spoon kind of feels the same way because a lot of it is like this like slapstick comedy, and like there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like jokes going off at Hutchkin's expense as the sort of like city boy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, it also feels like it doesn't feel childish, except for when it kind of means to, for the purpose of you know, for the purpose of displaying that sort of coming of age theme.
Yeah, I think she's exceptionally skilled at being able to kind of like place the reader in the perspective of whichever character she's focusing on, like regardless of their age, right? So she's focusing on like the teachers in the cast. Then you can see things like as the way they see it, trying to raise these kids. And then of course, a lot of the time you spend a lot of your uh of the story behind Hutchkin and his development, and it's like, yeah, no, you get where he's coming from as a as a teenager trying to figure things out. But I think that's kind of like being able to swap between all these different perspectives and also being able to tell this kind of like more mature story. I think it's what kind of like makes Silver Spoon really special to read.
Yeah, I the thing that I really appreciated about Silver Spoon was how realistic it was in a way that was not cruel, I guess. Like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't realistic in the way that it sort of unnecessarily blocks characters from you know uh like achieving their goals. Like there are moments like that, and
Mm-hmm.
that's part of what I appreciate about it, but at the same time it's like it is making sure to hold the ideals of sort of following your dreams and you know being able to do what you want with your own life, and also the responsibility that you have to your community and to your family, and just the sort of economic realities of, especially, for a student going to an agricultural school whose family's livelihood is like tied to the farm, and it being a sort of way of life that is actively always on the brink of, bankruptcy, always on the brink of going under. The margins on that kind of work are very tight, and it really does only take like one accident for it to all come, unraveled. So the way that there's no like storybook ending where, Komaba deals the perfect pitch and he gets to go to Koshien and get scouted, right? Like he just, it just doesn't happen. He just falls a little bit short. It's not his fault necessarily. It's just, sometimes it's just the way that it goes, and he, makes this promise to himself that, if he doesn't make it there, he'll pivot and, raise money so that his family can get by. And I don't know, it's just like it's just a really mature way of handling it. And I think it's really interesting because Komaba sort of approaches it in this very mature, realistic, practical way. But I think it's also important to remember that, for Hachiken, who doesn't have, this kind of baggage with his family, his family is like pretty well off. His dad has a good job. They have a place in the city, and it's not the kind of thing that has ever constrained him. But at the same time, he does have, his own things to worry about. But you can see, like, when he's like mad at Komaba for not pursuing his dream at all costs, you kind of see where he's coming from, and you kind of understand that perspective as well, and how important it is to also keep it in mind as, like, it's not just like you have to give up everything for your family, but like at the same time it's like, well, the things that matter to you also matter, and you shouldn't just give up on them forever, right? Like if you can't do it right now, that's okay, but that doesn't mean that you should just give up on doing it forever, right? And yeah, I don't know, it's nice. It's like it's just kind of a theme that goes and like continues recurring throughout the entire series, from the very beginning when he's like when Hachiken meets the principal, little tiny principal, and he's just like, it's okay if you run away, it's okay if you feel like you are just being crushed by the weight of expectation and you feel like you can't live up to it. It's okay if you run away from all that, running away is its own kind of strength, and it is valuable in its own way. It gives you time to think about and approach your problems in a way where, the very fact that you have had time to think on it and maybe look at it from another perspective is valuable. And I don't know, it's I really like the central sort of theme of like growing up. And I think there are a lot of ways that you can approach it. And I think that the one that Arakawa chooses is the weight of expectation, right? Of society, of your family. And the ways that the different characters navigate that is really interesting to me, especially the sort of, trinity of Hachiken and Komaba and Aki. And to a lesser extent, you can kind of see it with Hachiken's brother as well. How he's like, he did exactly what his parents wanted, right? He got into a good school, and then he immediately drops out. He's like, I did it. I did it. I got into university like you wanted me to, Dad. Now eat shit. Peace.
I think it's like you said, it's like wonderfully realistic, but in a very hopeful way, right? Which I think is what kind of makes this story so readable for people who are both, Hachiken's age and people who are, fully grown adults, because that's something that one could struggle with for at any point in your life.
Don't you worry, I'm 27 and I'm still struggling.
Yeah, exactly.
The struggle
I am too.
never ends.
I am too. It doesn't end. And this struggle between expectations that you either put on yourself or other people place on you, and what the reality of the situation is. How are you living up to those things? And Silver Spoon has a very kind way of addressing all of that. That even if you have like a dream that falls apart for one reason or another, right? That as long as you keep going, you keep moving forward, you pick yourself up, and you keep an open mind, more opportunities will come, and you'll eventually find something that you can hang on to and pursue with your passion. And you see it with like so many of the characters in the story go through their own developments that you wouldn't expect, that they themselves didn't expect, but they're happier in the end for it, right? Even though they went through a really tough time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think it's such a valuable work to read in that sense.
Yeah, I am a big fan of the depictions of adult life that you get in Silver Spoon, because they feel so grounded in a way that is so different from a lot of coming of age stories. Because a lot of coming of age stories tend to be about, not being able to adapt to adult life, not being able to kind of fit into adult society, and the process of learning to do so. And the way that it feels different in Silver Spoon is it feels less like, molding yourself to fit the expectations of society, and more like finding a way to make your own path that may or may not meet the expectations of those around you, right? I'm a big fan of the fact that Hachiken's brother is really smart, but he's just like a dropout that takes odd jobs. I kind of love that he's like he's like the poster boy of the ethos of Silver Spoon, where, he is by all rights what most people, in Japan and in here in Yol America would consider like a failure, right? Like somebody who dropped out of college and, doesn't hold a steady job, doesn't have a full-time job, works part-time, living place to place, and just kind of like living freely and also sort of aimlessly. And in most cases, you see someone like that, and the moral of the story is, well, you don't want to turn into someone like that, right? Like, you don't want to be someone like that. But in Silver Spoon, like, he also finds what he wants to do, and, he finds a wife and has a kid, and like uses his own experiences to be able to find work that works for him, and being like a Zoom tutor, I guess, which is really funny, like, actually, when you think about it, because it like the manga ended in November of like 2019, like right before like, listen, I'm just telling you that Hiromu Arakawa is a bit of a visionary. She saw it coming. She saw the direction that education would go and tutoring would go. I'm just saying, she was ahead of her time. People didn't know, but she knew.
She knew that this story would still be relatable post-COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know, there's something really appealing to me about the idea of having a story that is, demographically for young adults and adolescents reaching adulthood, right? And essentially conveying upon them the message of it is okay if your life does not go the way that you envisioned it. Most people's lives don't go the way that they envision them going, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it may be well into being an adult that you figure out what it is that you want to do, right? It's not an easy question to answer. And for many people, they spend their entire lives, looking for what that thing is. And for a lot of people, it may be something that, you have always known, you've known for a long time that you've wanted to do a certain thing, but it may just not be in the cards to be able to do it and to pursue it. But at the same time, it's not something that you have to give up on forever, right? This idea of establishing yourself as an adult by way of finding a way to live it's just a very realistic and mature way of approaching how life is.
Life.
Mm-hmm. It is a little unusual for a Japanese story to be a kid in high school decides to just become an entrepreneur basically and make his own business.
Yes. Uh-huh.
It's just a very different perspective than you would expect, right? Because the vision of adult being in Japan is that you become a salaryman and you work at the same company until you retire, and then you're just like an old person. Mm-hmm. You're just like an old person with grandkids, and you take care of your grandkids or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's about having a really stable job for the rest of your life.
Right. It is obviously to some extent more normal here for that kind of thing to happen. It's less unusual for people to do that, but at the same time it is, it's still a young person finding something that they're able to establish and do. And I really like how it's portrayed, because the first thing that he decides to do, that Hachiken decides to do, is to try to get his dad, who he does not have a good relationship with, on board as an investor, so that they can have money essentially to start the company, right? And mm-hmm. at the start they spend a lot of time working with the means that they have, right? They don't have any resources to start with, so they have to find some way to get the pigs, and they have to find some way to keep them and find some way to feed them, and it's just kind of navigating all this stuff. And then there's just the sort of logistical bureaucratic stuff of you have to have licenses for this and that, right? And mm-hmm. I really I don't remember what the senpai's name is, the senpai that Hachiken gets to work for him, to be the boss of the company. It's been so long since I've read this. I do not remember what his name is.
It starts with an O.
Yeah, it does start with an O. But he feels a lot I don't know. He feels like a very relatable character for a lot of people, in being somebody who is graduating high school and is just kind of having a hard time finding a place to go.
Okawa.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. He's just a very relatable character. He's good at a bunch of stuff. He has the knowledge and technique to be able to just make a wooden house for a dog just on a whim, right?
Yeah, he's very practical and resourceful, but he just can't find a job.
It's just, listen, some people are really good at a lot of things, but the one thing they're not good at is finding listen, some people just can't find a job.
I think a lot of people are nodding along right now. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Okawa is that Man. Oh man. The first time I was reading through Silver Spoon, I was like, man, I really feel what Hachiken's going through, like his turbulent relationship with his dad, how he just can't find anything that seems right for him. And like this time reading through, I was like, oh fuck, dude, Okawa. Holy shit, man.
I think this story probably has a character for everyone.
I think so too. I think you'll definitely find like some character that you relate to. Like there's so many characters, and like Arakawa is so good at the ensemble cast and ensuring that there is like enough screen time for everybody. Like it's just handled so well. Like there's like a bunch of chapters that don't even have Hachiken in them really, and he's just like, huh? And you're just like, yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Shifted the focus. Yeah, there were times when I legitimately teared up over characters going through their things, like Komaba or even Mikage.
Oh,
yeah, it speaks to you.
It just like feels like a story that was crafted by somebody who just has a really good understanding of what life is like. It's just like it is just the manga of somebody who is an adult with experiences, right? Like at the end of the day, that's sort of what it is, right? Like everybody has these ideas of what life is supposed to be like and what, getting a job and becoming an adult is supposed to be like. But at the end of the day, it is one of those things where it's an experience that will look different for everybody, and it will not necessarily resonate if you just conceptually know about it rather than like having actually experienced it, especially for somebody who I think like Arakawa has had such a wide variety of life experiences. The fact that she worked on her family's farm while wanting to be a mangaka and doing that for years, and like eventually pivoting to just like being a mangaka. Like it's just, in many ways, it's Arakawa sort of relaying to you her own life experiences in a way that feels meaningful and resonant.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the characters were based on people she knew. So I think she's great at the storytelling in terms of like she is able to actually convey the things that she sees and observes and interprets all of that into a story that can then be related with to a much broader audience. And that's a really specific skill, right? That's a very specific to storyteller skill that I think she's mastered quite wonderfully. And I think like it's great that she kind of ties the whole entire story together with like the educational aspects of the series too. Like you learn so much about living on a farm or everything that goes into like processing ingredients in food and stuff like every step of the process that we don't normally see as consumers. She goes into like hyper detail with, and it's really, really cool to see.
Yeah, that's like one of those things where it's so like obviously clear that she grew up in an agricultural place and has an agricultural background. Just the whole, arc of Hachiken getting attached to these little piglets and then eventually realizing that, they are, they're animals that were bred for the specific purpose of being turned into meat. And like thinking through like, well, what about if we just like, what if we just like didn't eat this one? Like, the logistical things of like, well, where would you keep it and how would you feed it? Right. And all of these kinds of things. Like it is a very like, it's very farm core, I guess. It's very clearly from the perspective of somebody who has experiences in this area of like, well, yeah, if you live in the city and you buy all of your meat in the grocery store, you're so far detached and abstracted from the process of, growing the animals and like raising the animals to become food, right? Uh, you're so far removed from that process that it is difficult to conceptualize, right? And for Hachiken, who is like our sort of surrogate insert, right, as the resident city boy, right, for the rest of us, city slickers, right, just the fact that he goes through this entire arc where he just very clearly comes to terms with, I mean, the nature of farming, right, and of eating, right, and I don't know, that is very, very like cool to me.
Yeah,
it's very like it's just really neat.
I like that it pulls the double duty of educating us and Hachiken as an audience to what goes on in farm life, right, like raising domesticated animals to be consumed, but then also serves as like a parallel to his own emotional maturity, right? Like, oh, I want to baby this little piglet and I want it to be mine and it's like my pet, and then you have to come to terms with the reality that this piglet has to grow up as an adult and then be sold and then slaughtered, right? Like he basically changes as a person after that arc. It's a really important development for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because it's both from a character standpoint, growing and coming of age, but just from like a metaphorical standpoint, I always think about how one of the sort of aspects of becoming an adult is always the conceptual reckoning with like life and death, and for a lot of people in like real life, that happens when a caretaker dies, or oftentimes it happens when they have a family and children, right? A lot of people's transition into adulthood is marked by the act of having children, and especially in America, that is like an expectation, right? It's an expectation that as an adult you will go get a job, get married, have children, and if you don't have any of these things by the time you're 30, like you're a failure, right? And society kind of reinforces this message like over and over and over again, but Silver Spoon kind of introduces it gently in a way that is not that, right? Like,
yeah.
Which is funny because like Arakawa like does have like 3 kids, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I think she has enough life experience to understand that not everybody is going to be like that, and I like that the way that Hachiken comes to terms with that conceptually is by like bonding with this little piglet that's raised to be food, right? And I also think that, like, just for me, philosophically, I think it is really important to think about where your food comes from and what the meaning of, like, eating is, and what the meaning of, like, essentially, like, the taking of a life is for the purpose of, of feeding yourself or feeding your family. And I think, like, for a lot of people, like, that's kind of the point where they'll, like, by all rights, a lot of people will get to that point and they'll just become vegetarians or vegans. And I think that is, like, an absolutely valid way to go about it. There's, like, any number of valid reasons to become, like, a vegetarian or a vegan. But a big one is, especially here, I would say that a big one is, like, just kind of reckoning with like animal death, and that like just sort of not being able to come to terms with that. or not wanting to come to terms with that, and that being a valid option. And for a lot of people, it has to do with like the factory farming industry and how bad for the environment it is, how kind of bad ethically it is, right? And I think that's like a totally valid choice. Obviously, like there are big factory farms in Japan. There are also a lot of like local family farms in the agricultural sector. I like that they go into the economics of having a farm, and like either being like this little tiny locally owned farm that like a truck drives to, and you give them all the milk that you milk from your cows that you have in your little sanitary tank, or or being like a big like factory, quote unquote, farm, and giving a little bit less individual care to these animals for the sake of productivity, right?
Yeah.
And like obviously people will draw the line kind of wherever they want, and for me, I think it's like I always think about where my food is coming from and the process of like of a life being taken to sustain yourself. And obviously the conclusion that I've come to is that like I'm okay with that, right? I think that there's I think like it's weird because I have this idea that I think that hunting is like one of those things where if you are hunting for food, I think that there is like a real validity and value and importance to being able to do so, just in the sense of like understanding intimately like what it means to eat, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's really important that a lot of people are out of touch with where their food comes from and what all goes into it. Like they take it for granted, right? And it's really easy to, because you can just drive to your local grocery store like 5 minutes away, pick up your chicken or whatever that's already pre-packaged and everything, and just go home and cook it and eat it.
Get your 6-pack of chicken from Costco.
Yeah, right. And I think in that way, it's like really easy to like not care if you don't finish that last piece of chicken. You just throw it out or whatever, right? Like not really in caring if you engage in food waste or whatever, because there's always more just around the corner. But I think reading a story like this, you really gain a sense of like the care and the respect that goes into the entire process. Like each stage of the process is really important to get that chicken to you.
Right.
Like including raising the chicken from a little chick. Yeah.
I mean, this is one of those things where I feel like because the characters in Silver Spoon struggle so hard and think about things so much, or don't think about things, right, on purpose, right? And they just like are always working in such a way as everything that happens, every victory that they get feels earned, right? And every setback feels like there was nothing that could be done about it, right? And I really I like that the ending of the story is like a couple of chapters that have time skipped like a year or two, not terribly far into the future, but like Hachiken's business has progressed a little bit, and there's just all sorts of development that happens sort of in between these two chapters where the time skip is, and all of it feels earned in a way that I think is really important to landing the ending, and why the ending is so well done, even though like the ending like wrap up is like maybe 2 chapters. It still feels like it was really well done, because the rest of the story was already so well set up to progress there. This is like the complaint that many people had about the epilogue in in Harry Potter before we found out that J.K. Rowling was a TERF, right? Then we found some other problems that we really had to address. But like the idea that when you skip to they're like 30 and their lives are already figured out, it doesn't feel earned in any way, because like they barely, if at all, graduated from school. So, like, and that's like where your life ostensibly starts. It is like by no means where your life skips to the happy ending, right? I really like that you're not skipping to a happy ending with Silver Spoon. You're just like literally skipping like a year forward and seeing where everybody is, and everybody's still kind of struggling to figure things out, and like some people have figured stuff out and some people haven't, and some people are still working on it, and I don't know, it's just all okay. It's just how life is.
It is. Yeah, it has a very satisfying conclusion in that way, and it's like, oh, okay, they're still going, and you kind of you're still rooting for them even though their lives have changed a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because it feels like even though you aren't seeing the end of the character's story, you're very clearly seeing the end of where your involvement in this story is.
Yes.
And I think that's a distinction that can oftentimes get lost.
Yes.
And to be cognizant of it and to perform it well is really hard. But
it is. It's like an unspoken skill.
Yeah. I mean, writing endings is an unspoken skill. So many people are bad at writing endings.
I mean, it's both spoken and unspoken in that regard, but like the awareness of where an audience's involvement with the story begins and ends is like something that only the author can be aware of, and sometimes they're not aware of it. They just kind of drag the audience wherever they want, and wherever they leave them is where they leave them. But it feels like Arakawa has a very purposeful way of like window that she gives the audience into the lives of these characters, and then when it's done, and you don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, I love the way that the story is paced as well, because I think it just works really well for Arakawa's style, because there is this sort of meandering at the beginning of it that like mirrors Hachiken's aimlessness. And it's something that you can kind of also see structurally in Fullmetal Alchemist, like at the sort of beginning when the brothers have kind of no idea what they're looking for really. And they're just kind of wandering around, and you just kind of see them like go from like town to town tracking down these clues. But in Silver Spoon, it's just Hachiken being here, like not knowing what he wants to do, and it just works really well because none of it ever feels like fluff for the sake of fluff. It feels like, if it is like fluff, it feels like it is still depicting something meaningful about the state of living.
Yeah.
Like, obviously life is not just important thing happen, right? It's like there is a lot of fluff between things, right?
Yes.
And it's a very real skill to be able to depict that fluff without getting lost in it.
Yes. There's a lot of meandering as well there.
Yeah. I really like Hachiken as the protagonist. I think he works really well.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, he's just like a hardworking guy, so you want to root for him. And I love that he goes through this development where, first he doesn't know what he wants to do, and then he figures out like something that he might want to do and starts like working towards it. And he's a little bit like misguided about it, so he has to go and he has to like kind of reform his plan. And it is through this sort of like succession of failures that he is able to find like a way of life, a way to find success, right? I like when he sees people from his middle school, and like they almost don't recognize him. They're like, oh my god, is that Hachiken?
Yeah, he's dreading it and everything. Yeah.
They're like, wow, you look great.
You look different.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a part of that too where, Hachiken is a character who is very hardworking and has a lot of expectation placed upon him.
Mm-hmm.
And it is only when he is put in an environment where others are able to see that work and appreciate it and to be able to support him as a community that he begins to succeed in any way. And it's obvious that if Hachiken had just gone to like a competitive high school and continued, he just would have not made it. Like he would have just had a breakdown.
It would have had the same result as the beginning of the story. I like that, he goes from being a kid who is very achievement focused, right, to the point that it broke him, to being aware of what's actually important in his life, and it's the people in it, right? He learns that the connections that he has with other people are so valuable to him that's what his entire career that he chooses later on is focused on.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that as well. Like, just the fact that you see immediately the amount of character growth that Hachiken has had when he goes home for the first time, and he obviously still has this very tenuous relationship with his father, but it's very clear that he's learned to have a real appreciation for all of the work that his mother does. Like the fact that he puts his own dishes away after eating, right? It's just like these little things where, a lot of people don't even really think about it, but it's like these little considerations that sort of add up and eventually turn you into an adult, right? It's sort of one of those things where it's less like, you'll realize it's less like you've become an adult one day, right? Like you like as soon as you turn 18, you just like wake up and you Pokemon evolve into being an adult, right? Instead of being that, it's very much just like you grow day by day, and then like one day looking back, you realize that you have somehow become an adult, and you're pretty sure that you should have figured stuff out by now. Because that's what an adult is supposed to do, and that's not at all what it's like. Yeah. Like everybody everybody is out here just like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, everyone like tries to pretend that they know what they're doing, but no one knows.
That's what being an adult is like. You just pretend. You just pretend like you know what you're doing. Like, I got
it all together.
Yeah. That's all right.
Yep.
Speaking of Hachiken's family, one of my favorite things in the entire story is his relationship with his dad, because it's terrible. It sucks.
Oh, it's awful.
He has such a bad relationship with his dad. Like, his dad is like literally like putting so much pressure on him that Hachiken feels like he has to run away, or else he'll just like die, right?
His father looks like a mob boss, kind of.
Right, he's scary. He looks scary.
Yeah, he's very stoic. He doesn't communicate anything emotional or anything like that. Like all of that is on the mom, and the mom does her best to try to bridge the relationship between her husband and her two sons, and it's obviously just not going well.
It obviously just doesn't go that well. Yeah. And like it is very clear after a certain point that it's not like he's being like unnecessarily cruel. It's just like he doesn't know how to express himself. And he wants what is best for his sons in a very particular way that does not ultimately align with what they want out of their lives, right?
Right.
And that's the parent-child relationship, like,
I think it's
of all time.
Yes,
right? Like,
and like speaking of like the whole like oh, you would expect Hachiken to become like a salaryman and yada yada whatever, like that's what his father is. like his father is the quintessential like Japanese salaryman, you know? And he has a family, he has children, and he works a stable job. He's got like a great, you know, like financial security, like all that kind of stuff. But his father's so far and away from what Hachiko wants to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the perspective of somebody who is so far removed from being a child, right?
Yes.
Like, obviously, there is the sort of the sort of adulthood that you hit between the ages of like 18 and like 37, right? Where you have no idea what the fuck is going on. But then, like, there's the point where you're, like, 50, and you're so far removed from the experience of being a teenager that, like, the irrational actions of like, children makes no sense to you.
I think that's
like,
where the father's at, yes.
Yeah, and, like, also, like, it's clear that a lot of it is just because he's just really bad at expressing himself.
Yes.
Which is, like... Yeah, that's like the Asian father, like, of all time, right? Like,
yeah, and I like the development between them where there was a point in the story where I thought that like them getting over their problems with each other, like it almost felt too quick, right? It's like one chapter they were like, or like considering the beginning of the story was about him breaking down because of his father's expectations and with the school and everything, and then later on in the story it's like all nice and good, but then later on, thankfully, there's enough clarification where it's like, okay, things are not actually all good between them. It's just that Hachiko has learned to tolerate his father and learned to communicate with him in such a way that they can both come together on one thing, which is Hachiko's future.
I adore that is the direction that relationship takes, because it is absolutely the most realistic relationship between a child and a parent, like, ever. Where it's not that your relationship has gotten terribly much better in any real capacity, more so that as part of becoming an adult, you kind of learn how to accommodate other people. And I think it's really important because there is a point where Hachiko finally stands up to his dad, right? And that's like kind of the first step in doing anything about their relationship with each other, and it is kind of the first moment where Hachiko's father begins to acknowledge Hachiko as an adult, right? As not just a child, is when he has the courage to stand up to him and to say, like, no, this isn't what I want, right? The fact that the ultimate endpoint of that relationship is like Hachiko being like, okay, I don't really like dealing with my dad, but I know how to talk to him now in a way that is constructive for both of us, and I need his support to make this company work. And that's such an abnormal depiction of a relationship between a parent and a child in media, but it's absolutely a very realistic one. And
it's so realistic, yeah.
Just the fact that he's like, I think that we will just never see eye to eye.
Yeah,
but even if that is the case, that doesn't mean that we have to cut, we have to cut each other out of our lives.
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
I also think that it's, in a way, that it's also valuable because Hachiko's brother kind of does do that, right?
Yeah.
And they're both depicted as being valid ways of approaching this, this relationship. Hachiko finds a way to work with his father, and Hachiko's brother just like fucks off. He's just like, no, I did what you wanted, and now it's time for me to go live my life, and I would rather you just not have any involvement in it whatsoever. And that's what he does. I don't know. It's just like such a interesting, nuanced way to portray that, and nobody else ever does it like that.
yes, it's I mean, it's something that I can relate to in my life too, where you know, like people in my life has said, like, as an adult, one of the things that separates you from being a child is that you're able to, at some point in your life, very clearly state the things that you want and that you believe in to people like your parents, right? And that's when you can acknowledge each other as adults. Right?
As adults, yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. And also, that goes kind of hand in hand with being able to communicate with your parents as adults and realize that you're no longer a child, therefore they're not always the force that's bearing down on you. It's you get to see them as their own people with their own lived experiences, and that's how their experiences have formulated them as people, right? When you think about the context of their lives and how their personalities are now, you can kind of like abstract that from, oh, they're just being overbearing towards me, oh, they just demand this or that from me. You can kind of understand where that all is coming from and how to communicate with them in a way that works for you, right? Mm-hmm. So again, even though you might not agree on everything, like you said, you can still be able to talk to each other. Yeah. So I really, really like that Arakawa like could portray their relationship like that, because that feels like very broadly relatable, I feel like, to a lot of people with difficulties with their parents or even difficulties with their children.
Yeah.
You know,
I listen. Yeah. I don't know. It is very relatable to me as somebody who in high school had a lot of trouble and disagreement with one's parents.
Oh,
and
yes.
As an adult has just like kind of learned to communicate with them in a constructive way. And like it is obviously like it's important obviously to recognize that that a lot of times, you know, what parents do that might brace against, you know, what you want as a person are in what they think is your best interest, right? And sometimes that might be misguided, and sometimes it might just come from a place that you fundamentally end up disagreeing with, and that's like okay, right? And you can either choose to try your best to repair that relationship or to find some way to make it work, or, you know, if it doesn't work, you just don't have to have that relationship, right? If it is like negatively impacting your life in such a way, it is absolutely valid to just fuck off. And I don't know, like it's having just one of those examples be in a piece would be like impressive, but the fact that both are there is like it's just very clear that somebody knows what they're talking about.
This person has seen things.
Haven't we all?
Yes. No, I completely get it. And I know people from both sides where it's like they're people who have cut off ties with their family because it was just untenable. And the other people who they do their best to keep their families in their lives and work together and maintain closeness. So, or mutual respect at the very least. So yeah. It's great. The fact that all of that is included in the story for sure.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I think we got it all. Yeah. Well, I think that's it. Yeah, I hope that we can pass on a silver spoon to you guys, our listeners.
as us, the podcast, as your parent ?
As your guidance in an anime filled world.
Yeah.
We hope for the best for you guys.
Yeah. We truly do. All right. Well, in that case, who are you and where can we find you on the internet?
Hello. I am Swan, also known as Renu. You can find me on Instagram at swan.drawn. You can find me on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere else at swandrawn. I will be on vacation this week, and I'll be back next week with my regularly scheduled streams and art and stuff like that. I've got a commission queue out the wazoo. I'm also going to be wrapping up Star Ocean, the second story, and then I might be moving on to a FromSoft game.
Oh, are you going to play a FromSoft game? Which one?
I will do my best.
which one are you going to play?
I think people have been recommending I start with Bloodborne. So
really?
Yes, and we happen to own it. So
okay.
Like, okay.
Well, if you own Bloodborne, I highly recommend playing it. I have never actually played it because I don't have a PlayStation.
Oh, okay.
So I literally do not have access to that game, and it would be prohibitively expensive to gain access to that game.
I wish they would port it.
You and me and many From Software players who don't own PlayStations.
Yes.
Yeah, Bloodborne's a pretty good place to start because it's a lot faster, I think. It's a lot faster, and it teaches you how to be a lot more aggressive, which is a quote-unquote more fun way to play the game and any From Software game. But, you know, it's also like, you can always find something that you want to do.
Sure.
My normal recommendation is Elden Ring because it has so much that is in the game that allows you to tackle it in different ways. In a way that, like, Bloodborne really just makes you do the one thing, right? Dark Souls has a couple of play styles. You can play magic, you can play sword and shield, you can play weapon. You know,
weapon.
You can play weapon. But yeah, I mean, Elden Ring is really good about having enough options to the point where you're never going to be stuck on something forever. And because it's such a large open world, if you are stuck on something, you can usually just like go do something else first. And
okay,
I think those are like really big things in making it like one of the most sort of accessible starting points. Because Dark Souls and Demon Souls and Bloodborne are somewhat more focused experiences in terms of having the route sort of be laid out before you, and essentially, you know, the way that those games work is that they put a wall in front of you, and you just have to keep bashing your face against it until you can get over it. And then, like, Elden Ring just, like, puts you in, like, a mouse maze full of walls, and then you figure out some way to get to the cheese. And then, obviously, Sekiro is, like, the most focused of those experiences, in that it's, like, okay, but now you have to do it. or else you aren't going anywhere. Like, do what we tell you to do.
I see. Okay.
That's what I would recommend. Yeah, I'm playing through Elden Ring right now, actually, and that game is so fucking big. Jesus Christ.
Yes.
They're gonna add DLC to it. At this point, I'm just like, man, does anybody even need DLC for this game? It's so big.
It's gonna be the forever game.
It's gonna be the forever game. It's fine. The director Yoshi P of Final Fantasy XIV gave us a week so that we can play Elden Ring before Final Fantasy expansion comes out.
How considerate.
Very considerate, except for the fact that I won't be here. I'll be on a weekend trip. Ah! An ill-timed venture, but only for me specifically. I'm being unfairly targeted.
Or Soupy.
Anyway, anything else?
Nope. What about you?
You find me all places at Literal Soup. Now and forever.
Forever.
forever. I don't know. I am but a phantom upon the internet these days. I do the podcast. I play Final Fantasy. I upload a video every now and again. And maybe I will get back to streaming once my life has calmed down. So maybe in the latter half of the year, probably. I think I'd like to get back to it. But man, it is just not really in the cards right now, let me tell you.
Well, you are getting married. So.
I am, yeah. And it's just a whole thing. I can see why people hire wedding coordinators now.
Are you guys doing it yourselves?
Yeah, we're doing it ourselves. That's why so much work.
My god!
It's like it's a small wedding at the end of the day, but it's still so much stuff to do.
There is still a lot of stuff to do. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Thanks for listening. Openings by Scotty Network and our endings by Takamakata. And the patrons we are thanking this week are Evan Williams, Claire, Trevor Bell, Magpie Marites, Sean Down, Dylan Bugs. Thank you so much for the support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time.
See you next time.
また明日ね。